Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Thrive PhD YouTube channel. Um, all during the month of March, I'm recording these videos to sort of go along with and supplement the rest of the material that I've been putting out to help grow and strengthen your writing practice. Um, and to keep with that particular growing garden ecological theme, this week's video is about approaching your writing like it's a garden or some sort of an ecosystem rather than a pipeline. So any person who has Googled for academic writing advice has probably encountered this idea of a publishing pipeline, that you have certain projects that are at various stages of the writing process. There are some that are drafted, there are some that are out for review, and there are some that are somewhere in the middle. And the idea is that you always want to have one, but most people will say more than one, piece in each one of those stages so that your pipeline, so to speak, never dries up, so that even if you have pieces that are out waiting for a review, you still have other things that are kind of cooking so that you have a constant stream of work. In theory, this is a good idea. It's a sound piece of advice. You should probably have multiple writing projects, especially even as graduate students. There is your big project, the dissertation or the thesis, but there are often usually smaller things that you want to keep out there so that you start to make a name in your subfield, for instance. But what I don't like about the pipeline metaphor is that it really focuses on this idea of constant productivity, that there's never a down point, there's never a lull. You are always working on something, moving it closer to the ultimate goal of being published. And while my gardening metaphor accomplishes much of the same goal, which is to have many pieces of writing all in different stages of progress, the shift in the metaphor actually reflects a change in thinking or framing. I think it's important to think about your writing as different things that are in stages of different process that need different things, so that you can both kind of match your energy on any given day to the piece of writing that you might want to give your focus to, but also to sort of recognize that truly, as the adage says, nothing in nature blooms all year. So we can't always be expecting ourselves to have a new publication coming out every 4 or 5 months, especially with the kind of forecasted slowdown in the publishing pipeline. There are so many people who have gotten out manuscripts during the pandemic, which is great, but it also means that there are fewer places to share, there are more backlogs, and truly, some of us, most of us, have at some point or another struggled to keep that pipeline full all the way through all of these disruptions. So thinking about it as a garden, for me, opens up the idea that you can have things that are in the planning stages. You can have things that need tending, things that need very careful, protected attention and focus so that they can kind of grow into stronger places, stronger plants, so to speak. You can have things that are well along in their progress of growth, that maybe need a little bit of water or a little bit of weeding, but you have a clear sense of where it is and where it's going. But what I most like is the kind of flexibility that it gives you around the idea of harvest. So harvest just means taking what's usable from the plant and sharing it. It might be that your harvest looks like a journal publication or a book proposal, but it could also be, and some of these projects go on to be shared directly with the community, or they go on to live in your blog, or they feed a teaching resource, or they become a conference paper. I love the idea of harvest and sort of sharing because it opens up different modes, different ways of thinking about where this work can eventually land. When we put all of this pressure on ourselves to publish everything that we've ever written and to take every project idea that we've ever had and move it from idea all the way to CV line, it puts a lot of pressure on every single one of those projects. So thinking about harvest as a metaphor can kind of open up the ways that you're imagining where this work goes. And as so many of us are called to do more service or do more teaching or to publish in non-traditional ways or to take advantage of some of the more rapid forms of publication, whether that's a blog or an online journal, the more we can kind of expand the goal for some of these writing pieces, the more we can give ourselves credit, instead of saying, well, if it didn't get published in a peer-reviewed journal, it wasn't worth my time. Almost every project that you do, I mean, and I can't say in absolute terms for everybody that every project you ever touch is magic and it made some sort of, impact on you in the way that you think. But what I can say is that the more that we approach our writing and the things that feed our writing practice, whether that's reading or research or talking to participants or gathering data or organizing sources or reading other people's work, all of those things that feed a healthy writing practice do ultimately enrich us as scholars. The last thing that I love about this kind of gardening metaphor is the idea that there will be some places in your thinking, in your overall portfolio, that for different seasons are going to be laying fallow. Um, Laying a field or letting it go fallow is a gardening and sort of agriculture term that means that you've purposefully let it rest. You are doing that because you know that if you plant repeatedly in the same area without ever taking steps to revitalize that soil, add nutrients back, that you're going to have less and less yield over time. And I think anybody who's ever tried to take an article and or an idea that they have and get an article out of it, a conference paper, a teaching class, a keynote, the more that you take out of some of these ideas, ironically, the less we can get out of them over time. They can start to feel stale, we can start to feel blocked, they can start to feel repetitive. So letting some areas, some corners, some projects lay fallow is a really great way to frame the idea that rest has a purpose inside of these writing practices. There's a reason that we rest. Sometimes it's so that we can get perspective around an idea. Sometimes so it's that we personally can recharge and have the energy that we need to take a project even further forward. But that rest isn't a lull or a problem that solves. It's not an issue. If you have a big gas bubble in the middle of a pipeline, that can really gum up the works, so to speak. But to let a field lay fallow is just a natural part of the process of the regeneration of the soil and of keeping this healthy ecosystem. So on my blog, which I have linked to sort of all over the YouTube channel, but you can easily find, I've written a little bit more about the different seasons that a writing project can be in and how to think about keeping each one of those seasons or maybe a project in each of one of those phases as you can, so that if you have a day that you're a little bit low energy, you might do some planning, or you might do something that is a low maintenance task. But envisioning your practice is something that's sustainable and ultimately something that nourishes you, and even better yet, nourishes the community of scholars that you belong to, the community of people that you're writing about, the places and spaces that this work will touch. Imagining that work, the fruits of that particular writing practice as going out and serving can be a really useful way to reframe away from the publish and perish model and into something that has a little bit more of a connection to your values. So I hope that there were some ideas here that were useful, and I'm so excited to keep moving forward with you all in this month of March Madness. Talk to you soon.